the faith which immediately supplanted that of ancient Babylon and Assyria, could not fail to draw considerably from it. The Zoroastrian faith is the good belief, the belief in good, the problem being that in Babylon and Assyria, the good and the bad were merged together. In fact, they were one, and could not be told apart, and they believed that they took the good faith with them, but could not fail to draw considerably from it. This was the Zoroastrian faith, the religion of the Persians, introduced by their reformer, Zarathustra, the earliest form of Zoroaster's name, as given in the Avesta. Uncertainty hangs over the date and place of his birth, similar to Saint Bede. He was 7 when he arrived, and nobody knows where he came from. Saint Bede appears to have been groomed for the position. Oh my, why do they come from the same date? Saint Bede and the plague of 684. He goes on to rewrite the history of Britain. The Greeks spoke of Zoroaster as belonging to a remote age, but modern scholars assign the period of his life to the latter half of the 7th and early 6th century BC. The difference being that Zoroaster is before the affliction, and Saint Bede is after the affliction. 7 of 7. Again, similar to Saint Bede, nobody knows where he came from. It seems certain that Zoroaster was not a Persian, but a Mede or Bactrian, either position being supported by indications of one kind or another. From the whole tenor of the Gathas, the most ancient part of the Avesta, we are led, says Dr. Haug, their translator, to feel that he was a man of extraordinary stamp, acting a grand part on the stage of his country's history. Zarathustra speaks of himself as a messenger of God, sent to bring the people blessings of civilization and to destroy idolatry. But be aware that the Anunnaki are 7. Their names vary, but their number 7 does not. 7 items of any variety. Many legends grew up around his memory, of miraculous signs at his birth, of his precocious wisdom, whereby even as a child he confounded the Magi, of his being born up to the highest heaven, and their receiving the word of life from the deity itself. Together with the revelation of all the secrets of the future. Very similar to Lugalbanda, who was granted immortality by the Anzu bird. In Sumerian, the god Sen, the wisdom of heaven, or the teeth of God. Lugalbanda, the young, fierce king. Zoroaster retired as a young man from the world to spend long years of contemplation before he began his teaching at 30, and he lived to the age of 77. Nergal's number is 30. Nergal is an Anzu, and the Apkallu, the wise sages, also have 7 monstrous alter egos, meaning the scribes are at play here. Marduk, the container, Zoroaster, is no different. The religion he taught was the national religion of the Persians from the time of the Echumenides, who dethroned Zoroastrians. As you can tell, I don't give a shit about pronunciation. It simply holds you back and puts you off, and allows the scholars to ridicule. From the time of the Echumenides, who dethroned Zoroastrian's son in 558 BC, to the middle of the 7th century AD. It declined in that region after Alexander's conquest under the Seleucidae and the succeeding dynasty of the Arsacidae. Here we find the Latin version of the King of Kings. In Persian, the Arshaka, a king of kings. Alexander was Scythian nobility, and the Saka is their blade of choice. I believe this refers to the bankers. Zoroastrianism was resurrected by the Sasanian rulers and flourished for 4 centuries, from 226 to 651 AD. Then followed the Mohammedan conquest, of course accompanied by persecution, before which the faithful followers fled to India, where they are now represented by their descendants, the Parsis of Bombay. The religious belief taught by Zarathustra is based on the dual conception of a good principle, Ahura Mazda, and an evil principle, Anra Mainyu. As mentioned, the 7 of 7, the daemon who can't be told apart, and the leading idea of Zoroaster's teachings is the constant conflict between the two, which must continue until the end of the period ordained by Ahura Mazda for the duration of the world, the end time, meaning everlasting, when evil will be finally overcome. Oh my. Until Ahura Mazda's power is to some degree limited, as evil stands with him. Zarathustra's doctrine was essentially practical and ethical. It was not in abstract contemplation or in separation from the world. That man was to look for spiritual deliverance, but in active charity. I note giving to charity is not active, but inactive. Deliverance, but inactive charity, the deeds of usefulness, in kindness to animals, in everything that could help to make the world a well-ordered place to live in courage and all uprightness. Now here comes the part where we should have concern. To build a bridge or dig a canal was to help to lessen the power of evil. As Reinach has concisely expressed it, a life thoroughly occupied was a perpetual exorcism. The two figures, Ahura Mazda and Anra Mainyu, the one with his attendant archangels and angels, and the other with his archdemons and demons, or divs, the Apkallu and their monstrous alter egos, the Seven of Seven, compose the Zarathustrian celestial hierarchy as represented in their earlier sacred writings. In the later ones, other figures are introduced into the pantheon. The sacred writings that have been preserved for us are similar to the work of Enoch, of different periods, and outside the range of Zarathustra's moral system. There are traces of them, and are the revivals, the resurrection of an older primitive nature worship, and of the beliefs of an early nomadic shepherd life. For instance, the sacredness of the cow and dog are held, as well as the reminiscences of general Indo-Germanic myth. I say, what is the cow or dog without a bull or wolf? Ahura Mazda was the creator of the universe, for the duration of which he fixed a certain term, time, reminding me of the serpent swallowing its tail. It seems uncertain whether the Persians pictured the world as round or flat. Here, the flat earth theory is the seal of seven. According to their idea, it was divided into 7 zones, of which the central one was the actual habitable earth. Between these zones, and also enveloping the whole, was the Abzu, the great abyss of waters, between heaven and earth, between An or Zu, rose the netherworld, the Kur, the celestial mountain, whence all the rivers upon earth had their source, and upon which was deposited the Haoma, a ritual drink, the Avestan Haoma, the Sanskrit Soma, a word meaning to press, to pound. I advise you not to dabble. It's made from psychedelics. The exact mixture is debated. Believe me, that's one strange mixture. I believe it is connected to the spittle and the Sumerian manbag, which was used to transfer power to the practitioner, thereby allowing the priest to dispel the demons as if he was Pazuzu, alongside the Apkallu and their monstrous alter egos, the Seven of Seven. The central feature of Zoroastrian ritual was the worship of fire, alternatively lightning, the origin of fire, an old established worship which had existed before Zoroaster's time. In the oldest periods, images were forbidden. This is important. And holy rites could be performed without temples, portable fire altars being in use. Temples were, however, built in quite early times, and within these was the sanctuary, from which all light was excluded, and where the sacred fire was kept alight, which could only be approached by the priest. Now there must be something evil lurking in the fire, because when the priest approached it, he must cover his hands and mouth. The Persians carried the fear of defilement to an extreme, and had even more elaborate regulations than those living in the East concerning the methods of purification and avoidance of defilement, both as regards personal contamination, mamit being taboo, or that of sacred elements, earth, fire, or water, even hair and nails could not be cut without special directions as to how to deal with separated portions. But this is a perpetual and exhausting state of caution and protective effort against contact with defiling objects, and rigorous system of purification had an ultimate concern with the great struggle going on between the so-called good and evil, Merodach, death, and everything that took part in death or had any power over injury were works of the arch-enemy. Bel-Zu, know thy enemy. We are told, but do we listen? It was owing to the fear of contamination, the three elements, earth, fire, and water, that the Persians neither buried or cremated their dead, and looked upon it as a criminal act to throw a corpse into the water. The old mode of disposing of the dead was similar to that now practiced by the Parsis of Bombay, who carry the body to one of the towers of silence, Merodach, Marduk, Dumar. The Persians exposed the corpse until one of the other devouring agents, birds of prey or the elements, had reduced it to a skeleton. As regards man himself, he was thought to be a reasonable being, of free will with conscience, or the lack thereof, who had a soul and a guardian spirit, or prototype of himself. I believe this is our own genetic memory, and must be the reason I know without knowing. The prototype of himself who dwelt above, called a Fravashi, his own character. Indeed, put into a spiritual body, almost identical with the Ami Malchen, or spiritual nymphs, of the Araucanian Indians in Chile. He had the choice of good and evil, and consequently suffered the due punishment of sin. For the first 3 days after death, the soul of the dead was supposed to hover about its earthly abode. During this time, friends and relatives perform their funerary rite. Their prayers and offerings become more earnest and abundant as the hour drew nigh, when the soul was bound to start on its journey to the beyond. This was at the beginning of the 4th day, when Zoroaster carried it aloft, assailed on the way by demons, desiring to obtain possession of his burden. On earth, everything was being done to keep the evil spirits in check. The fires were lighted, as they were thought, to expel the powers of darkness. And thus assisted Zoroaster to arrive safely with his charge at the bridge that spanned the space between heaven and earth, here at the entrance to the accountant's bridge. The soul's account, the person's actions, was cast up by Mithra and Rashnu. The latter weighed its good and evil deeds, and even if the good deeds turned the scale, the soul still had to undergo immediate penance for its transgression. For more details on that, see Mamit in the ancient Egyptian culture. And so strict was the justice measured out to each person. Now the bridge may be crossed, and a further automatic kind of verdict was given. For those fit for heaven, the bridge appears to be a wide and easy way. To the unfortunate one, doomed to destruction, it seems as if but a hair's width, and stepping onto it, they straightway fall into the yawning gulf below. The blessed ones are met by it, the gatekeeper. Its radiance is immense, but it is not a god. The blessed ones are met at heaven's gate by a radiant figure who leads them through the antechambers that finally open into the everlasting light of the celestial abode. This is the so-called triumph of the individual soul, but there is a far-off divine event awaiting, which will be heralded by signs and wonders. For 3,000 years previous to it, there are alternate intervals of overpowering evil and a conquering peace. At last, the great dragon is let loose, and the evil time comes. But Mazda sends a man to slay it. Then the Saviour, Saoshyant, is born of a virgin. The dead arise. The sheep and goats are divided, and there is lamentation on the earth. The mountains dissolve and flood the earth with molten metal, a devouring agent of destruction to the wicked, those who dwell in Lambda. And from all of this, the good take no hurt. The spiritual powers have now to battle it out. Mazda and Sharosha overcome Ahriman and the dragon, and then age, decay, and death are done with, and in their place are everlasting growth and life. Similar to Thanos and the Illuminati, we know this utopia comes with a price.